Millennials and Gen Zs cannot afford to move out. It's too expensive. We're going to go over that in this video. And I'm also going to share with you what's required to move out, especially if you're looking for your first apartment. Let's get right into it. Just to give you guys a backstory of who I am, I'm a local real estate agent here in the tri-state area. I moved out of my parents' house back in December of 2006, right after graduating high school. I've been on my own ever since. And I remember the first time when I moved out, I was super excited, right? It's a great feeling to have. You feel like you get to grow up, take responsibility. You don't have to answer to anybody. You have more freedom. And what I realized was after settling in, after about a month or so, uh, the nervousness and the stress kicks in. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you first move out, you have the biggest responsibility basically of all your life at that point, which is, hey, I have to pay this rent every month and every other personal item or bill that I have that I'm responsible for. So when you move out, yeah, it's fun, it's exciting in the beginning, but you're going to run into a little bit of stress because of those things that have to be paid. But in order to get over that, just make sure you have a good job, right? I always recommend before you do it, have a good job, at least a job that pays all the bills so you don't have to stress. Because when I first moved out, you guys are going to be shocked, but at the time, my rent was $320 a month, right? Like in today's day and age, you can't buy, like your cell phone is typically 320 or a car payment, right? Car insurance is 320 a month, but my rent was 320. And at the time, I stressed because I didn't make that much when I first moved out. But I never ever gave up. And I'm honestly thankful that I did. So what I did was I went to my parents and said, hey, I want to grow up. I'm moving out. I want to experience it. I found a place, ended up renting it for $320 a month, and I stayed there for 5 years. 5 years. So, like I said, that's a backstory of me when I first moved out. But I kind of want to go over in this video, what does it really cost today now, to move out? Because to be honest with you guys, I see it every day. It's super expensive. And I'm sure you would agree with me. It's expensive, right? Right now we have high inflation, right? The job market's not the best, right? We have an election in 3 weeks, right? It's very, very difficult to make it, right? You go on these job interviews or you apply online and no one's responding. So let's start with the beginning part. Once you start looking for a rental, what is really required, right? You'll see an apartment on Zillow, you might see it on Facebook, you might see it on Realtor, wherever you see the apartment posted. You're wondering, okay, what does it really take for me to rent this place? And it's pretty straightforward, guys. I'll make it very simple for you. The average rental in the United States, take a look at the screen right now, across the country is anywhere from $1,500 to $1,700 a month for a one bedroom, depending on where you live, right? Some places are a lot cheaper, some places are a lot more expensive. But let's just go with that average, 15 to 1700. All apartments, on average, or a majority of them, require 2 to 3x gross income to qualify. What do I mean by that? If the rent is $2,000 a month, you need to make $6,000 a month to qualify for the rent. I'll break that down again. If the rent is $2,000 a month, you need to make $6,000 a month gross. Why do places and apartments require that? Good question. The reason why is they want to make sure you're able to make the payment. The other reason is they want to make sure that after you get paid, which is your net, you have enough money to pay your personal bills, right? Because not everybody's going to make $6,000 a month. When I first moved out, I didn't even make $2,000 a month, even though my rent was $320 at the time, right? When you go around and start applying for these places, you need to be prepared that everything's going to require 2 to 3x. Some places will negotiate and allow you to do 2.5x, which is great as well. So when you're going around, like I said, ask these questions. What are the requirements to move in as far as income? The other piece that's super important to anything in life, especially here in the United States, is always going to come down to credit. Guys, I can't stress this enough. Credit is super important, okay? Make sure that you have a good credit score. Anywhere from the range, in my recommendation, from what I've seen, okay, depending on the place you're moving to, you should have at least a credit score close to 700 or above. Why is that? It just makes you look more professional, responsible, and you're taking this serious about your future. Some places are flexible. You might be able to get it to go through with a lower credit score because you have higher income, or you might be able to get a cosigner or whatever the case may be. So guys, keep in mind the credit score is super important to get approved. Now, let's say you're short on the rental, you don't have high income, but you can make the payment, but you have a high credit score. Some of these places will allow you a cosigner. So don't be afraid to get maybe mom or dad or a family member to cosign. It just helps make the application a lot stronger to get approved. Now, the final piece that you really need to have here to get approved for an apartment, besides income and credit, is you need to have stable work. What do I mean by that? A lot of these places do background checks, right? So they want to see where you've been working for the last typically 2 years. Have you filed taxes? Are you in the same field that you were in before? Can you hold a job long enough? Are you jumping around from job to job? Are you collecting unemployment in between? A lot of these places have very, very sophisticated background check systems that can see that based on your social, where you've worked and where you haven't worked. So, like I said, keep this in mind. Out of those three things, you need to make sure you have all of those things lined up and they're all in good order before you apply. Because a lot of these places, which is, I feel it's messed up, but a lot of these places, when you go to an apartment complex or anything like that, they have a fee that you have to pay to fill out the application to see if you get approved. And what ends up happening is, let's say you go to like the first place, but you get denied. Well, guess what? You just wasted $50 or $100 filling out an application, and they're not even going to tell you the truth of why you got denied, right? So I always recommend make sure you have your credit report printed out. You have an idea of where your credit score is. Make sure you have all your pay stubs ready, even your bank statements in order, right? Showing you're getting deposits, and you have proof that your job that you work at, you've been there for a decent amount of time and you do get paid. Now, going back to what I originally said of the topic of this video, millennials and Gen Zs cannot afford to move out. What do I really mean by that? Well, if you take a look at what's going on across the country right now and what's required for a rental, the average rental, back to what I showed you before, is anywhere from $1,500 to $1,700 a month. It is very difficult to come out of college or high school and get approved for an apartment when you don't make a lot of money, right? Some of us don't make $6,000 a month. Some of you might make $4,000 a month, right? If you make $4,000 a month, the likelihood of you getting approved is very difficult. Why? Because the cost is too expensive. Again, why do I say that? It's because I see it. And I'm not just using where I live, because the cost of living here is a lot more than the rest of the country. And California is a great example of this too. The cost of living in California is super high. For where I live here, the average rent for a one bedroom in a somewhat decent place, guys, in a decent place. Remember, you don't want to live in a crappy neighborhood where your car's going to get stolen every day. But on average, a decent place is going to cost you $2,000 a month. Remember, you have to make $6,000 a month to qualify. Let's say you're lucky, you negotiate, you're able to get it approved at $5,000 a month. That's pretty difficult to do, right? So what do I mean by that? You have to make a lot of money to qualify. It's not easy to get a job right now, especially after school, right? I know how it was for me. It was difficult. When I left high school, I didn't make a lot of money. Minimum wage is really not that much. You're not going to qualify. This is one of the reasons why I make these videos, is because it's super frustrating to see how things are playing out. The younger generation needs help. You, me, we all want to move out. We all want to experience life. We want to have the freedom, right? We want to take on the responsibilities. We want to be able to be productive members of society. How are we able to do that if the jobs can't pay enough and the requirements are too high? Right? Not a lot of people talk about this, and I think they should, right? We need to figure out a way to make it work. And it's so sad because when you see it every day, you're like, I really want this person to get approved because you know they're a good person and they work hard, but their income is a little low, or maybe their credit score is a little low. Like, it's not fair, right? You know people are not going to default on their roof over their heads. Like, that's the last thing you're going to do if you lose your job, right? This is why, in my opinion, I feel the millennials and Gen Zs in today's market, in today's day and age, in 2024 and going into 2025, are struggling. Because remember, they all want to move out. You want to move out, right? You don't want to stay home with mom and dad anymore. It's time to grow up. How can you? It's not your fault. You did everything by the books, right? You went to school. You got yourself jobs, internships. Now you have all this debt when you come out of school, student loan debts, car loans, credit cards. Well, guess what? All that pops up on a background check when you apply for an apartment. So now the apartment complex or leasing company says, hey, we can't approve you because you have too much debt. Isn't that messed up? I think it's messed up. Remember, I go back to the story earlier when I first moved out. Yeah, was it a lot easier? Yes, but there was still stress, right? Remember, $320 in 2006 for someone that didn't make a lot of money in general was a lot of money to me. So just imagine right now, if your rent's $2,000 a month, how are you going to pay it, right? You have to work like 2 jobs just to pay it. Guys, I hope in this video I was able to kind of go over and explain to you what's really required to move out. Because remember, I'm a real estate agent. I work with rentals. I work with buyers. I work with sellers. These are the requirements that are needed to move out in today's market. I hope I answered any of your questions from before. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Until then, good luck on your search for your new apartment. Stay safe. God bless.